Here we are in Liverpool. Welcome to Question Time. Good evening. Welcome to our audience here who will be putting the questions, and to our panel who, I swear to God, do not know what the questions are until they're asked them by the panel, by the audience, despite what people say. Our panel is the Conservative Education Minister Liz Truss, Labour's Shadow Energy Secretary Caroline Flint, the President of the Liberal Democrats, Tim Farron, the Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens, and the author of the book Chavs, Owen Jones. Now, we'll take our first question from Joy Boyd, please.
Should the government introduce a windfall tax, ditch green levies, or should we just wear more jumpers?
Should we just wear more jumpers? Well, this is the third time we've discussed this, and it comes up all the time because the picture keeps changing. Peter Hitchens.
None of those things. What the government should do is abandon the ridiculous drive towards green energy, which is the main part of this price increase which we can control. We can't control the world price of energy, but we can get rid of this crazy system of milking the public to subsidise landowners and others to build useless windmills, which most of the time don't produce any power anyway, and which are only there to serve a mistaken dogma about man-made global warming.
How much could you bring down the price of energy? If you had your way, how much would it bring the price down?
One of the things, I couldn't give you an exact figure, but I think probably, probably I would guess 50 or 60 pounds of an average bill would come off as a result of those things. But what is much more important is far more will come off, because all these green levies and things like the carbon floor tax are due to hit even more heavily on the public in the next few years than they are now. That part of your electricity and gas bill is due to go up. And at the same time, this country is risking serious energy problems, because here we are, a country sitting on huge piles of coal, which refuses to burn it on the grounds that it will create global warming, while China, for instance, builds another couple of coal-fired power stations every month.
Do you think we should reopen coal mining?
I think we probably should. It is the cheapest form of energy. It's one we produce ourselves. It's absolutely absurd to deprive ourselves of, and as we're doing at the moment, we have shut down, and are in the course of shutting down more perfectly efficient coal-fired power stations in this country, not because they don't work, but because of European Union regulations which force us to do this crazy thing.
Okay. Tim Farron.
Well, I mean, politicians who talk about putting an extra jumper on are politicians who've never known what it's like to have to work hard to get next week's rent and to pay the bills, and so that's an outrageous suggestion to make. When it comes to the green levies, it's really important to remember what they actually pay for. They pay for the 2 million lowest income households to have 135 quid off their energy bills. They pay for the insulation.
Those aren't green levies, those are redistribution.
Absolutely, but it's
why
about...
do you call them green levies?
But it comes under that. It also includes the money that we give to elderly people to insulate their homes.
But that's not what they're talking about.
And it's fair.
Yeah.
And the element of the green levies that people talk about, you know, it's not about windmills, it's about making sure that people in this city have jobs in green manufacturing. If we're concerned about our children today, we've got to be concerned about our children tomorrow and in the future as well. Climate change is absolutely happening. It is the single biggest threat that this country faces in the decades to come. And if we don't face up to it, then our legacy will be trashed.
So what's your policy for the general complaint that prices have gone up by 8 to 10%?
We have the weakest and most useless of all the regulators looking after our energy sector. Ofgem is pathetic in the extreme. Ofwat, the water regulator, is able to prevent water companies putting up their prices more than once every 5 years. Recently, Thames Water tried to put theirs up by 8% and was stopped by Ofwat. If you've got a watchdog like Ofgem that has got no tooth, no bite and no bark, you put that flaming watchdog down and you replace it with one that can genuinely cut prices.
Okay. Liz Truss.
Well, I grew up in a house where my dad was constantly telling me to put a jumper on and turning the heating off. And once the pipes froze because it was so cold and we got flooded. So, you know, there is a limit to what you can do with a jumper. And
we do need more should be done with jumpers there?
Well, I'm just saying there is a limit, and we do need
obviously there's a limit, but do you think people
energy.
should take the advice of wearing an extra jumper, like Number 10 said at one point last week?
Well, I don't think it's about jumpers. This is about how expensive energy is and the fact that gas prices doubled under the previous government because we didn't see investment in new power sources. And we've just signed a deal on Hinkley Point, which will mean that there is new energy coming forward in 2023.
Nuclear.
But we've had years and years of a lack of investment, a lack of a clear energy strategy. And yes, you know, coal is important in the short term. We also need to get gas going. We need to make sure we've got shale gas being exploited in this country, which will benefit local communities. We also need to look at liquid. We also need to look at liquid natural gas. And one of my previous jobs was working in liquid natural gas shipping, where you can sign in long-term contracts. But we do need to look at the green taxes to be able to do that, because at the moment they are incentivising particular forms of energy that are extremely expensive.
But
and that's why the government...
You talk about
we've
gas.
already reduced...
You talk about gas. No one's taking up this point about the green levies because they're all...
I'm just about to say it before you interrupted me.
Well, the point about the gas is we have to import increasing amounts of it because we no longer make our own. And we have to import it to run power stations, to provide power for the enormous amounts of time when the windmills don't work because, have you guessed it, the wind isn't blowing.
OK, all right. What's your point about rolling back the green taxes that the Prime Minister said he was going to do? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I would like to see that because I think it's wrong that we're implementing green taxes faster than other countries. We may be potentially exporting jobs out of our country because energy is so expensive. These policies were put in place by Ed Miliband. These policies were put in place by Ed Miliband.
You voted for them.
Nonsense. You voted for them all.
These policies were put in place.
Not everybody wants.
The Prime Minister has said that he wants to review them because he now feels that we are moving faster than other countries and it's potentially damaging to our economy. It's absolutely not. It's absolutely sensible economics when people are facing high costs of energy prices. We're taking the action that Labour didn't take. A nuclear power station has not been built since 1995. We all knew these problems were in the pipeline for years and years. Labour did nothing to put the new energy supplies in place. They did nothing to do any nuclear power, which is a renewable source. Gas has half the emissions of coal to be able to still hit our carbon targets. But I think there are better ways to hit the green targets which are important.
Which are what?
Will deliver, well, investing in nuclear, investing in shale gas will help us achieve those targets.
None there.
Perhaps the public would be more supportive of green taxes if we knew that that would then generate more jobs in the future.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Caroline Finn.
Well, first of all, to Joy, what we've witnessed in the last 24 hours is David Cameron once again making up policy on the hoof. He's in a panic. He is clearly sensing there is a huge public discontent with the way their bills are rising in the last few weeks, but also the last 3 years. We've seen £300 go on bills. And you know what, Liz? Actually, the House of Commons Library has confirmed that bills are going up 3 times faster since the general election.
Labour.
3 times faster since the general election under this government. And let me be clear about something. What we are witnessing here is a Prime Minister who is using green levies, and of course we've got to have value for money, and of course we should get jobs out of it. But he's using these green levies as an excuse for not standing up to these energy companies and the way they operate. He hasn't got the bottom to do
Can I just make a point on that? Can
Wait a minute, Caroline. He says your policies are a con trick, that you can't do it.
Well, he's flapping around because he hasn't got any. Let me be clear about what our policies are.
Is it a con trick or not?
It is not a con trick. What we said is, when we have looked at wholesale prices, not the green levies, but the wholesale prices, Peter, we looked at 2009. Wholesale prices dropped by 46%. We never saw that reflected in a reduction on our bills. And why is that? Because we have ended up, after decades since privatisation, with 6 companies dominating 98% of the market.
And when did that happen?
They create energy, sell it to themselves, sell it onto us. And the reason why they reduced was that John Major took away the restriction on separating generation from supply, which led to the big 6 we've got today. And something needs to be done about that. And Cameron is just not up to it.
Okay.
That's why we said we're
the number of... Just on this point,
A brief
the number of companies dropped from 14 to 6 under Labour.
Because John Major...
Don't interrupt, please. Let people have a say,
They fell from
or it'll be
14 to
chaos.
6 under Labour. What did Labour do to get high-quality, low-cost energy into our country? They say that we needed nuclear power stations. They didn't build anything. They didn't do anything to promote competition in the gas and energy markets, which we're now doing. Why did the number of companies fall? And now we've got 7 new entrants into the energy markets in the last 2 years.
Don't interrupt, Shelley.
It's your legacy, Caroline. It's your legacy.
Caroline, just wait a moment. Let's hear from Owen Jones, and then 1 or 2 members of the audience. You hold the point you want to counter, and I'll let you do it.
Well, I find this new Tory war on green levies fascinating. Do you remember David Cameron pouncing around the Arctic, hogging huskies? Do you remember vote blue, go green? Do you remember the Tory party that changed their logo to a tree, and now they're waging all-out war against these environmental levies and the green jobs of the future? But just in terms of the first question, I think it's a really important question about how we deal with this crisis, and it is a crisis. I think it's fascinating because we heard this swivel-eyed talk, kind of neo-McCarthyite talk of socialism and Marxism because of a temporary price freeze, when actually, if you look at the polling, as far as the British people were concerned, what Ed Miliband was proposing was too moderate, because nearly 7 out of 10 want our energy supply back under the control of the British people in public ownership. And I'll tell you why that's so quickly. I'll tell you why that's the road we have to go down. Last year, the Big Six made £3.7 billion worth of profit. They're now hiking up their prices by, 10%? They're going to drive 9 million people into fuel poverty. That will be people lying awake at night, panicking about choosing between heating their homes and feeding their kids. And this is not hyperbole. People will die because of these price rises. Already, 20,000 elderly people die in excess winter deaths. Excess winter deaths, a horrible, macabre phrase. According to Age UK, you are 3 times more likely to die of preventable death in a cold home as a warm home.
Right, well,
for that reason, they have forfeited their right to control energy supply.
Why would nationalisation? You've heard all the discussion about shortages of fuel and all the rest of it. Why would nationalisation make any difference?
Because what would happen then is, instead of lining the profits of greedy shareholders and CEOs, the likes of whom, for example, are now building a £2 million mansion, using money squeezed from the bills of pensioners, freezing, literally, in some cases, to death in their homes.
2 million is not going to go very far in providing
we can invest that in actually saving lives and actually having energy prices which people out there can afford.
The gentleman there has had his hand up for some time on the left of the audience there, you said.
It's true that, that the deal at Hinckley is brilliant for British jobs and British business, but it just astounds me that, given the comments the panel have made tonight, why the government haven't looked at the consumer side of the deal in as much depth as the other economics within the deal.
You mean you think the pricing of what the Hinckley is going to provide has not been thought about?
Well, not as in depth as possibly the job creation issue.
Okay, and over there with the person with spectacles there, yes.
Why don't we just get rid of the green levy tax and put more money into nuclear and coal, because you're going to get far more jobs out of coal-fired power stations and nuclear power stations than you are going to get out of windmills.
Not in Germany. Right. In Germany, they've created hundreds of thousands of renewable energy jobs. Those are the jobs of the future, green jobs.
Caroline Flint, I said I'd bring you in. Can you answer his point in your way?
Yeah, I mean, just as Owen was saying there, in Germany, 2/3 of energy generated, which is solar and wind, is actually coming from individuals and community-based organisations. And the truth is, we're apparently the windiest country in Europe. And it's not just about onshore, it's about offshore. And when I look at the places around our coastline that are looking to use offshore wind as a way of getting jobs and skills, it's an important part of the mix. Now, we need a mix, and I believe nuclear is part of that. I have to say, when we were discussing nuclear under the Labour government, David Cameron said it should be a last resort, and the Liberal Democrats were against using nuclear power. So they've come on a bit since then. We doubled renewable energy under the last government, and we need to do more. But investment in renewable has halved in the last 3 years.
Right.
It's about the mix, and it's about where we need to be in terms of being ahead of the curve on jobs, but also cleaner, cheaper energy in the long run and security.
Let's come back to the current problem and the winter ahead.
This point about nuclear power, Caroline's saying she's in favour of it. Why did Labour do nothing when they were in government? We've signed a deal which is more affordable.
We set it in
the electricity price is more affordable than wind power both on and offshore.
Let's talk about the winter ahead and what's going to happen and what your party is going to do to help people who are in difficulty, as John Major put it. we're going to choose between heating and eating. What's your party going to do about it?
Well, we have a cold winter payment. We have the winter fuel allowance.
But all these policies that were suddenly announced in the House of Commons on Wednesday, are they going to take effect immediately, quickly? Are people going to see a reduction?
Well, I think it's very important that we do support families struggling to heat their homes.
How?
And we do find solutions.
What are you going to do for those elderly people freezing in their homes?
First of all, we're enabling people to get cheaper energy bills by asking companies to make sure people are on the lowest tariffs, which
but if everybody's putting up their prices,
we're
what's the point of that?
well, not everybody is, and people are already switching to cheaper
You've slashed the money
companies.
that was going to the fuel poor. The ECO, the energy company obligation...
I think it's an absolute cheat when you did nothing in office to create the supply that we need for affordable energy.
The other two-thirds of it could go to people who can afford to insulate their homes anyway.
Watching the two political parties handling our energy industry is like watching a drunken man running about with a Ming vase. These people have no idea what they're doing. The two political parties, the Tories by privatisation, breaking up the Central Electricity Generating Board, destroyed what was probably the most advanced and skilled centre of nuclear power generation in the world, and threw it away. Labour finished the process off by selling Westinghouse, so that we now have to go and beg the Chinese and the French to build nuclear power stations for us who pioneered civil nuclear power. It is so pathetic, it is almost beyond grief to expect something. None of them will be honest about the extent to which our policies are controlled by the European Union, which, as I say, is forcing us to close down perfectly serviceable coal-fired power stations, which actually means that as the power fails, which it will do as a result of this, great parks full of diesel generators, which are terribly eco-friendly, will have to be brought in to cover up the gaps. They don't know what they're doing. The question of this winter is, of course, important, but the real question is that between now and 2020, these insane green levies will push the prices of... These insane green levies will push the prices of your gas and electricity up more and more and more, and these people won't even talk about it and won't do anything about it. They're all of this not minute, as people will find out. They are all of them committed to this green lunacy. Blame them, not me.
It's basic economics of demand and supply. There is insufficient supply of energy. It's not because of green levies. Green levies is about making sure we guarantee the future for our children and our children's children. And by the way, if you want to talk about
children's children,
correct.
You're not answering the question.
And the economic point, if you want to invest in green energy that will create real jobs in this city, 95% of the supply chain of tidal and hydro energy is completely and utterly British. Yeah. That's the way to create jobs.
Tim, would you like to see this spending on green energy come out of taxation, and therefore, by implication, the rich are paying more than the poorer? Well, or are you happy to have it loaded onto the bills of everybody equally?
I'm not dogmatic about it. It's just
why not? Why aren't you dogmatic?
Because why should you be? I mean,
because it's a regressive tax. You're in favour of regressive tax.
I'm not. The important thing is to be both progressive and green. If you can do both, then that's absolutely the right thing to do. But the critical thing, looking at this winter, is his life and death. Oh, it is dead right. It will be life and death for many people, and we have to tackle supply. It means creating the more creation of energy from within these shores, but it also means making sure we regulate and regulate now, because within the profit margins of the big six is the ability to cut bills for millions of people in this country.
Tim, you know as well, though, but of the bill, you know, of the sort of average dual fuel bill, about £1,300 a year, £50 of that is going to support the development of green renewable energies. £50. That's why we cannot let David Cameron off the hook by blaming these green levies when the bigger issue is tackling the energy companies. And we need reform of that market, and our policy is to get rid of the present regulator and establish a tougher energy watchdog.
I think we've covered the point. Just want to hear one or two members of the audience, then we'll go on. You say in the front here. Yes. Just a point you'd like to make.
We've heard in the news that Ed Miliband wants to put a temporary freeze on bills, and we've heard that Sir John Major wants to put a windfall tax.
Right.
But shouldn't we look at maybe cap the increase the energy companies
proper regulation
charge, maybe
proper regulation
at the rate of inflation, something rather than 8, 9,
yes.
10%.
They'll always put the interest of profit in front of the consumers. That's why we just can't allow the big six to keep strangling like this.
Okay,
it's blackmail, effectively. Just before we leave the point, Liz Truss,
Is it in the power of the control Ofgem to say you'll bring those prices down, as a matter of fact?
Well, they could.
We won't accept
They could
10%.
do that, and we did have RPI minus X regulation in the industry. The issue is that we don't control international gas and oil prices. Those go up and down, and Ed Miliband has admitted that his Fairy Godmother Act wouldn't work if international prices went up.
Okay, but
the point is that if you cap prices and prices go up internationally, then you end up with the 3-day week and the lights going off. So what we need to do is enable investment into our industry and encourage investors to. You didn't do the investment. You didn't do the investment, Caroline.
And they have gone down. We believe a tough energy watchdog should have the power to ensure that the energy companies, not just the big six, pass those reductions on to consumers. Because we all know when they go up, they go on our bills.
You know what? You could do that.
Thank you very much.
Do that now. You could do that now.
We are doing that now.
Thank you. We'll move on to another topic, because that's the third time in 4 weeks we've discussed this, and each time brings out something new, but I don't want to stay on it for too long. Of course, if you're listening at home and want to comment, I'm sure you may want to comment, you